Say hello to my BMW Mulligan, this 1991 BMW 850i. After my previous purchase of the most hated BMW in the USA, a 2005 BMW 745i, triggered a giant BMW hate fest on my part, I decided to sell it and use the funds to buy the BMW I've always wanted. Actually, the car wizard sold my 745i to a local Halstedian at his car dealership, and this gal is probably driving around town thinking she looks like the Grand Duchess of Halstead, Kansas. And the car wizard will no doubt have a frequent flyer at his repair shop for the rest of his days. Now, everybody knows BMWs like to make their own little version of a Mannheim Steamroller Christmas concert with the dashboard lights as they age. And if I was going to actually own one again for a long time, it needed to be a model that was worth the pain. Now, I've never owned an 850i before, but I've always lusted after this smooth 12-cylinder, pillarless windowed, pop-up headlighted work of art, even though I've heard all of the horror stories. Yes, I know the BMW 12-cylinder is just two inline sixes basically welded together, and it was engineered like it was conjoined twins at the hip with two of almost everything. Now, when all these two sides work together in concert with their own intakes, throttle bodies, oxygen sensors, computers, ignition controls, fuel rails, and who knows what else, this silky smooth engine can run like only a V12 can. But when one of these thousands of bits decides to act up, it's a scenario similar to one of the Rockettes kicking the wrong way, which breaks the nose of the gal next to her and sends the whole dance line falling off the stage. It's a bad scene. Even with the problems, BMW continued to plow headlong into making their cars even more electronically complicated, and in my opinion made the ownership experience of the 850i seem more sane in comparison. At least with the 850i, you don't have to deal with failing Vanos, valve stem seals, Nikasil cylinder liners, timing chain tensioners, rod bearings, Biddle plastic cooling bits, valley plan gaskets, SMG pump, those cables that make the whole seats kind of twist in some weird contortion. Oh, and they like to catch fire, apparently. Really, I'm being too hard on the brand, as these engineering risks do actually pay off in an exciting and often dazzling package that is really fun to own. Even though I think the 850i is more serviceable than modern BMWs, I wasn't crazy enough to buy the cheapest one in the United States. Since they are so old and the automatics don't bring very much, there are plenty of running basket cases out there priced cheap, but would require an investment several times over what the car is worth, like a mint one, just to get back into decent shape. Still, I wanted to find a bargain on a decent car, and my search ended with this 850i listed on Autotrader, which, linked below, is a column on Autotrader that tells a lot more about my 850i. It was actually the cheapest 850i for sale on Autotrader. And yeah, it has 154,000 miles on it, but I only paid $7,500 for it, and it came with quite a pedigree. The car arrived with a trunk full of service records, totaling at least $20,000 worth of repairs in the last 10 years, from the original owner who brought it brand new in December of 1991. He must have been a pretty good negotiator, as he got a deep discount from the original window sticker of $82,000, walking away with this beautiful machine for only $68,000. Still, accounting for inflation, that window sticker would have been like $150,000 in today's money, and he was still paying the equivalent of $130,000 out the door. This 8 Series was built for a totally different price bracket than the outgoing 6 Series. Despite being a gorgeous design, I imagine the cost of entry, high maintenance, and mediocre performance didn't make it a big seller. The V12 didn't even break 300 horsepower, and the 0 to 60 was somewhere in the mid-6s. A Corvette or even a Nissan 300CX Turbo would clobber this, and it didn't even have the ability to hit crazy Autobahn speeds, as it was electronically limited to 156 miles per hour. Still, pop-up headlights. Maybe. There we go. Oh yeah. Still, the 850i looks futuristic even today, with styling nods in the nose to the epic BMW M1 race car, and its cockpit-looking interior with its pillarless windows makes it one of the prettiest coupes ever. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for the 8 Series to continue out of the 90s, and the highest number ever used in the BMW lineup was retired just before Arnold Schwarzenegger prevented the Y2K virus from ending the world as we know it. About year 2000, 1999, whatever. Now the number 8 is coming back, at a time when the luxury car segment is much more crowded, and actual two-door coupes, not those four doors that are stupidly called coupes, barely sell anymore. The idea seems about as nuts as buying one of these old ones sight unseen, which is, of course, what I did, despite my horrible track record. Even with all the pedigree my car had, and a fastidious, well-intentioned owner, it still showed up broken. I really thought I was in trouble on the first drive, as the suspension felt way out of whack, which is weird since in the service records, much of the suspension was shown as replaced. Turns out the seller neglected to tighten one of the front wheel lugs when he put the original set of wheels back on, and it was about to fall off. I was actually swerving around the highway, trying to figure out what was loose on the front end with finger-tight lug nuts. It also had a few minor steering bits that need to be replaced, but it could have been much worse, obviously. The other big scare with this car was a ticking noise coming from the engine, which I thought was something serious, like a tick of doom deep inside the V12. My mechanic actually traced it to a belt tensioner, which is not a big deal. And there was another death noise that was actually traced to a failing AC compressor. Eventually all these bits will get sorted, and I may have to cheat on my car wizard since I backed him up with so many other projects. And of course, I'll give a rundown on the total costs and details of sorting this car out in a future video. And as for what it's like to finally get my hands on a car that I've wanted forever, well, have you ever heard of the term "don't meet your heroes"? Now, I'm not saying I'm disappointed yet, as I love the looks of it, but after driving this thing, it's left me thinking, is that all there is? Although, I did buy this thing with a manual transmission swap in mind, which I'm sure will liven up that ultimate driving machine experience quite a bit. I'm excited to fly out to LA this weekend and attend Radwood on December 2nd, a festival of 80s and 90s cars, and apparently a manual swapped BMW 850i will be there for me to check out. I expect the show to feel just like home, only with much nicer examples of what I have in my Hoopty fleet. I've actually rented a Tesla while I'm out there, so I may not even be allowed to park. Anyway, if you think having two V12s now, with this and the broken Bentley, is further proof of my cognitive decline, hit that like button. And as always, thank you for watching.